A towel whipped my temple. Then the scream, "That's mine." My son stood in the doorway, silent as stone. I left with $180, a bruise on my forehead, and a power they never knew I possessed. They had no idea the deed of trust on their house was in my name. When I returned, it was not as a mother, but as the one holding the contract, the seal, and the deadline. My name is Miriam Caldwell. I am 62 years old, and I was folding laundry. The fabric was still warm from the dryer, the scent of lavender and clean cotton rising in the small utility room. I was smoothing the wrinkles from a silk scarf, a deep blue one Arthur had loved, when it was snatched from my grip. Before I could even register the empty space in my hands, the silk snapped across my face. "That's mine." Lila, my daughter-in-law, stood over me, her face a mask of tight, proprietary anger. The scarf, now clutched in her white-knuckled fist, was the weapon. The sound of it hitting my skin was a sharp, wet thwack that seemed to silence the hum of the dryer. It was followed by the loud clatter of the plastic laundry basket as she kicked it. The basket skittered across the cold tile floor, vomiting clean. Warm clothes in a heap at my feet. The smell of the detergent, so pleasant and domestic just moments before, now felt suffocating. My temple throbbed, a sharp, sudden sting that was already blooming into a dull, humiliating ache. I looked toward the doorway, my first instinct to find my son. Evan was standing there. He had been there the whole time. His tall frame filled the entrance, his arms crossed over the chest of his expensive work shirt. He was frowning, but his gaze was not on my face. It was on the scattered pile of his own clean shirts and socks, a small, inconvenient mountain on the floor. He saw the mess, not the cause of it. He saw the disruption, not the assault. "That's mine," Lila repeated, her voice lower now, but vibrating with a chilling conviction. She stepped over a stray towel, her bare feet pale against the grey tile, and began to lecture me as if I were a new, incompetent employee. "We need to go over the closet rules again. Miriam, it's simple. Anything new, anything nice, anything silk or cashmere, it's mine. You don't get to decide what's yours anymore. You just get confused." I'm sorry," I whispered. The words came out automatically, a pathetic reflex etched into me over the last 8 months of living under her roof. My hand, trembling slightly, moved toward a soft, cream-coloured cashmere sweater in the pile. I had bought it for myself last winter, using my own pension money. It was a small, necessary comfort after Arthur died. I had worn it exactly once. Now, avoiding Lila's eyes, I carefully picked it up, my fingers brushing the soft wool. I intended to place it back in the basket, or perhaps on her designated pile, or wherever she deemed it belonged. "See old people get confused?" Lila sneered, snatching the sweater from my grasp before I could even fold it. "This is exactly what I'm talking about." I swallowed. The lump in my throat felt hard and dry, like old bread. I wanted to say it was mine. I wanted to say I bought it. I wanted to say, "Don't you dare talk to me like that." But I looked at Evan, my last hope. "Evan?" I started, my voice barely a thread. "Mum, just don't make a scene," he said. He finally looked at me, but his eyes were blank, tired, and deeply irritated. He sighed, a sound of profound impatience. "I have an online meeting in 5 minutes. I really do not have time for this." He turned and disappeared down the hall. The sound of his home office door closing was as definitive as a gavel strike. I was alone with her. Humiliation washed over me, cold and heavy, mixing with the hot, stinging pain on my temple. Lila, having won, kicked the basket again, this time at me. It slid on the tile and hit my shins, hard. More clothes, towels, and underwear tumbled out, covering my feet, trapping me in a soft, fragrant prison of my own making. I looked down at the mess, at my worn slippers peeking out from under one of Evan's grey t-shirts, and as I bent, my joints aching, to start the slow process of picking them all up, my gaze caught something, a reflection in the dark, blank screen of the smart doorbell panel on the wall by the garage door. It was angled just so. I could see the distorted, wide-angle image of the utility room doorway. It couldn't see me on the floor, but it saw the entrance. It saw where Evan had been standing. And I knew, with a sudden, electric clarity that cut through the shame it heard everything. It was designed to record motion and sound. It heard the thwack of the scarf. It heard, "That's mine." It heard, "Old people get confused." It had saved the audio file. Lila gave one last, disgusted huff and stalked out of the room, her footsteps heavy as she went upstairs, leaving me on my knees on the cold tile. As I began to gather the scattered laundry, one piece at a time, my hands moving mechanically, I finally understood. This was not an accident. This was not a moment of stress or a simple misunderstanding between two women. This was the law of this house. I was not a guest. I was not family. I was a problem to be managed, and the rules were set by her. And my son, my only son, would do nothing to stop it. The ache in my temple was nothing compared to the cold, hard certainty that was settling in my chest. 8 months. It has been only 8 months since I lost Arthur. He died on our porch in Asheville, North Carolina, on a cool Tuesday morning. He was holding his favorite mug, the one I'd gotten him from a potter in the mountains. He just stopped. The paramedics were kind, but there was nothing to be done. I remember standing in the backyard after they left, the air still smelling of damp pine and the azaleas he had just fed. The silence was deafening. 2 weeks later, Evan arrived to handle things. He sat with me at the kitchen table, our kitchen table of 30 years, and held my hand. "Mum, you can't stay here alone," he insisted. His voice was thick with what I thought was concern. "It's not safe. It's too big. Just come home with us. Just for a while. Until you're back on your feet." Lila was with him. She smiled, a perfect, polite stretch of her lips that did not reach her eyes. Her eyes were like steel mirrors, reflecting everything, absorbing nothing. "We'd love to have you, Miriam," she said. Her voice was light and smooth, but her grip on Evan's arm was tight. So I came. I let them pack up my life, put my home Arthur's home into boxes and storage. I let them drive me 4 hours east to their immaculate, modern house in the suburbs. The room they gave me is in the attic. The ceiling on one side slopes so low I have to stoop to get to the narrow bed. There is one small, rectangular window that looks directly out onto the complex's shared parking lot. All night, I hear the sound of car doors slamming and, in the summer, the relentless, grinding hum of the central air conditioning unit just below my window. It is a room for storage, not for a person. The day I arrived, Lila presented the house rules. She had typed them in a small, crisp font and laminated the sheet. It is held to the stainless steel refrigerator by a strong magnet. Kitchen hours, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., 12 p.m. to 1 p.m., 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Laundry Miriam, Tuesdays only. Lights out, common areas, 10 p.m. I am Miriam Caldwell. For 41 years, I was the head registrar at the Everhart County office. I managed budgets that ran into the millions. I organized schedules for judges, lawyers, and a staff of 30. I am a woman who understands and appreciates rules. I know procedure. But I have never, in my 62 years, known contempt. Not like this. The contempt is not in the rules, but in the delivery. It is in the small corrections that Lila dispenses daily. The way she tastes the soup, I make Arthur's favourite lentil soup, and sighs. Too much salt again. Miriam, I've told you about your sodium. Or the way she holds up a dust cloth. You used the beeswax polish, didn't you? The smell is so old-fashioned. Each comment is a small, precise paper cut. Each one is designed to remind me that I am a burden, a guest who has overstayed a welcome that was never truly offered. And Evan, my son, he has chosen peace. His peace, not mine. The more Lila corrects, the more she finds fault. The later Evan works. He discovered a crisis at the office the week I arrived, and it has apparently not subsided in 8 months. He leaves before I am allowed in the kitchen and returns after my curfew for the living room. On the rare occasions we are in the same room, his face is buried in his phone, his shoulders hunched. He offers me small, tight smiles that are apologies for his own cowardice. I told myself. It's just temporary. He's grieving too. It will get better. I said it yesterday. I said it this morning, before the incident with the laundry. But better never comes. Every day. The invisible line between mother and border gets drawn thicker in a darker ink. The crack between my son and me, once a hairline fracture, is now a chasm. It is a silent chasm. We do not yell. We do not fight. We simply exist on opposite sides of it, pretending it is not there. Tonight will be a weekend dinner. Friday. Lila will cook. Something elaborate and fashionable she saw on a blog. She will talk about her clients, the wealthy women in the city for whom she does lifestyle consulting. I will sit at the end of the table. I will pour the tea. I will make my body small, try to take up less space, and listen to the sound of my own heart, hollow and empty as a drum. The escalation was not sudden. It was a slow, methodical constriction, like a snake tightening its grip. The incident with the towel was just the first time it had left a visible mark. The small tyrannies had been in place for months. About 4 months ago, Lila had approached me while I was balancing my checkbook at the kitchen counter. "Miriam," she'd said, her voice dripping with false concern. "I've been noticing you seem a little stressed managing your finances. It's a lot to handle when you're grieving." She placed her hand on my arm. "Why don't you let me hold your debit card? You know, just for safekeeping. I'll give it right back to you every Tuesday, and you can get all the groceries for the week. It'll just take one less worry off your plate." And like a fool, I agreed. I handed it over. Now, I wait for Tuesday, for my weekly allowance from my own pension, to buy the food she will later criticize me for preparing incorrectly. Then came the lock. 2 months ago, I woke with a migraine and went for my prescription. A small, chrome lock had been installed on the medicine cabinet. A note was taped to the mirror. "Just ask me. Miriam don't want you taking the wrong dose." Lila kept the key. I had to ask her. Like a child. For the pills my doctor of 15 years had prescribed. I had to explain my headache. my joint pain, my sleeplessness, and wait for her to dispense the medication, often with a sigh, as if my ailments were a personal inconvenience to her. Last week, a new latch appeared on the washing machine, the one I was now only allowed to use on Tuesdays. It was a simple hook and eye, the kind you put on a screen door. "Just so we can schedule our loads," she'd chirped. "I can't have my delicates sitting wet because your rinse cycle interfered with my drying schedule." My schedule. A single day. Her schedule. The other 6. The humiliation of it all was a constant, low-grade fever. After the laundry incident, with my temple throbbing, I retreated to the attic room. I needed something. Anything. That felt like my own. I pulled out the small accordion file of important papers I'd brought from Asheville. It was mostly old tax returns and Arthur's personal effects, things I couldn't bear to put in storage. I was just sifting through them, my hands needing a familiar task, when I saw a utility bill Evan had left on the kitchen island. I'd picked it up by mistake, thinking it was junk mail, and tucked it in my pocket. I pulled it out. The electricity bill, and the name on the account made my breath catch. It was not Evan Caldwell or Lila Caldwell. It was the Caldwell Family Trust. My blood ran cold. I knew that name. Arthur had set it up years ago. I tore open my accordion file. My fingers, clumsy and stiff, fumbled past old receipts until they found what I was looking for. A thick, manila envelope labeled House. Inside, 7 years old, was the documentation for a bridge loan. It was from Arthur to Evan and Lila. It was for the down payment on this very house. I remembered the day. Evan had been short on capital. Arthur had been so proud to help his son. "Just a formality, Miriam," Arthur had said, guiding my hand to the signature line. "Just so the kids are protected and we're all clear on the books." I had signed. As the trust's co-beneficiary, I had never read the full document. Now, I read it. I put on my reading glasses and sat under the single, dim bulb of the attic lamp, my back aching from the low ceiling. I read every word. It was a deed of trust, a legal, binding mortgage. The lender was the Caldwell Family Trust. The borrowers were Evan and Lila Caldwell. The trustee, the third party designated to handle the terms, was a name I knew well, Amos Whitaker, our lawyer in Asheville for 30 years. And then I saw it. Page 4, Section 9. A special addendum, typed in the same font, but clearly added by Arthur himself. A morality clause. The loan, which was at 0% interest, was contingent on the home being a place of refuge and respect. Arthur had been a sentimental man, but a precise one. The clause stated that the loan could be called in full with a 30-day notice. In the event of willful neglect, abuse, or mistreatment, verbal or physical, of the benefactor. The benefactor. Me. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the attic's poor insulation. A 30-day notice. 30 days. It was legal. It was wry. It was clear as a bell. I closed the folder. My hands were perfectly steady. The throbbing in my temple had subsided, replaced by a cold, sharp focus I had not felt in 8 months. I was not a guest. I was not a burden. I was the bank. And for the first time since Arthur died, I did not feel powerless. My discovery of the document must have changed the air around me. I must have carried myself with a different, less pliant energy, because the very next day, Lila manufactured the final crisis. I was not in the utility room. I was in the kitchen, during my allotted 1 hour window, making a piece of toast. Lila came storming in, holding an empty, overturned bottle of liquid detergent. "You did this," she stated. It was not a question. "You poured this all over the floor, and you just left it. Are you trying to make me fall? Are you trying to hurt me?" "Lila, I haven't been in that room since yesterday," I said, my voice quiet. The toaster popped, and the sound was like a gunshot. "Lies," she hissed. "It's always lies with you." "Evan," she shrieked. He came, running this time. He saw the empty bottle. He saw Lila's theatrical tears. She did it on purpose. "Evan, she's trying to make me slip. I don't feel safe. I want her out." I looked at my son. I waited for him to ask me. I waited for him to look at the floor, which was perfectly dry. I waited for him to defend me. He didn't. He just looked exhausted. "Mum," he said, rubbing his eyes. "Maybe it's for the best. Just for a few days. Just go stay in a hotel, and we can all cool off. Let things reset." Where would I go?" Just go," Lila said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Think about what you've done." An hour later, I was standing on their immaculate front step with my cloth suitcase and the small accordion file. Evan pressed a wad of cash into my hand. "This is all I have on me right now," he mumbled, not meeting my eye. "It's $180. I'll send more to your card." He knew, of course, that I did not have my card. He knew Lila had it. He said it anyway. He closed the door before I had even reached the sidewalk. He did not send more. I walked to the bus stop. I took a bus to the highway, to the stretch of cheap, transient motels that line the interstate. The first one I checked into smelled so strongly of bleach it made my eyes water. The man behind the scratched plexiglass took $60 from my hand and gave me a key card. The room was beige. The bedspread was a thin, pilled nylon that zapped with static when I touched it. The sheets beneath were rough, like low-grade sandpaper, and I could see the outline of the mattress springs through them. The television, bolted to the wall, showed only snowy static. I sat on the edge of the hard bed. I was 62 years old. My husband was dead. My son had just turned me out of his house. I had $120, a bruise on my temple, and a suitcase of clothes I was not allowed to wear. I gathered my long, greying hair, my hands shaking, and secured it at the nape of my neck with an old rubber band I found on the floor by the nightstand. That night, I ate a pre-made sandwich from the vending machine down the hall. I made a cup of instant coffee using the lukewarm water from the bathroom tap. I carefully, meticulously, calculated how many days I could afford to eat this way. Then, when the neon sign outside my window had buzzed its rhythmic red light into the dark room for hours, I turned on the single lamp. I placed the brown accordion file on my lap. I ran my fingers over the familiar, worn cardboard, Arthur's precise block letter labels. My fingers stopped on a thick, legal-sized envelope I had never paid attention to. It was sealed with a circle of red wax, the kind he used for important contracts. In his unmistakable hand, it said, "Miriam, only open when you truly need to." I broke the seal. Inside was not one, but two things. The first was a handwritten letter on his old stationery. "My dearest Miriam," it began, "if you are reading this, I am gone, and the world is not being kind to you. Do not let them break you. You are the strongest person I have ever known, even when you do not think you are. I have always known your strength. I built you a legal railing, my love. Do not be afraid to use it. The second thing in this envelope is the map. The map was a single, typed sheet. It was a full, detailed list of every asset in the Caldwell Family Trust, every investment, every stock, every property. And at the bottom, a single line, Amos Whitaker. He has all the original documents. He is waiting for your call. I sat there, in the bleach-stinking room, and I did not cry. I counted the days since I had arrived at Evans. I counted the days of small cuts, of locks, of rules. I counted to that morning. I took out my old, simple smartphone. I had never sent an email in my life. It took me 20 minutes to compose it, my thumb tapping slowly on the glass. Dear Mr. Whitaker, this is Miriam Caldwell. I am Arthur's wife. I need to use the railing. I sent it. Then, I opened the smart doorbell app on my phone. I went back 2 days. To yesterday. I found the file. I pressed play. The audio was perfectly, horrifyingly clear. Lila's shrill. That's mine. The sickening thwack of the silk, my own small, choked gasp. And then, her sneering voice. See, old people get confused. I pressed and held the button. Save to device. A small check mark appeared. The proof. The evidence was mine. The power was mine. The rights, I was about to find out, were also mine. I used the last of my $180 for a bus ticket back to Asheville. When I walked into the offices of Whitaker and Hale, I felt diminished. My posture stooped from the motel bed. I was still wearing the clothes I'd been kicked out in, my hair pulled back with the same grubby rubber band. Amos Whitaker looked to be about 70, with a sharp crease in his trousers and eyes that held the quiet, steady confidence of a man who has seen everything. He did not treat me like a vagrant. He stood when I entered, walked around his desk, and took my hand gently. Miriam, he said, his voice warm. I have been waiting for your call for 8 months. I am so very sorry about Arthur. He was a good man. He led me to a chair, and I did not cry. I did not tell him about the towel, the lock on the medicine cabinet, or the bleach-smelling motel. I just sat down and said, Amos, I believe Arthur built a railing for me. I need to know if it's still standing. He smiled, a thin, professional smile. It is. Miriam. It most certainly is. He turned to the thickest file on his credenza. The Caldwell Family Trust. The deed of trust on your son's home is fully valid, active, and legally binding. Since Arthur's passing, you are the sole and exclusive beneficiary. You control the trust. Entirely. What does that mean, exactly? It means, he said, tapping a paragraph on the document he'd pulled out, that we have recourse. Based on the addendum Arthur insisted upon the morality clause, we have the right to call the loan. The process is clear. We issue a formal notice of default, citing the specific violation of the clause. He paused, and I reached into my purse. I took out my phone, opened the audio file, and placed it on his desk. Is this a violation? Amos leaned in. He listened to the thwack. He heard Lila's shout. That's mine. He heard her sneering voice. Old people get confused. His face, which had been kind, hardened. The kindness left his eyes, replaced by a cold, precise anger. He listened to the entire clip, including Evan's dismissal, then sat back. That, he said in a low voice, is a cannonball breach of the contract. We have them. The next step. Miriam, is they will have 30 days to cure the default. That means they must pay the entire principal of the loan back to the trust. They don't have that kind of money, I whispered. I assumed not. If they fail to pay in 30 days, the trust has the immediate right to begin foreclosure proceedings. The house will be sold. It's clean, it's legal, and it's ironclad. I took a deep breath. I don't want them to know it's me. Not yet. I don't want the phone calls, the begging. I want it done by the book. Anonymity. Wise, Amos said, already making notes. We will immediately establish a simple LLC, a holding company to act as the administrative face of the trust. It will handle the correspondence. He looked out the window at the mountains. Let's call it Ridgeview Holdings, LLC. Ridgeview, the place Arthur had proposed to me. That's perfect, I said. Now, Amos, I said, feeling a new, cold strength. There's more. The list Arthur left me mentioned the Riverbend Artisan Market. Amos's eyebrows shot up. Arthur's pet project. Yes. The trust is the majority owner of that building. We manage the leases. Is there a tenant named Lila Caldwell? He turned to his computer. He typed for a moment, and then he sighed. Suite 4B, Lila Lifestyle. It says, she sells things online. He clicked again, and his lips tightened. My goodness. Arthur was very generous with his family. Her lease is 60% below the current market rate. 60%. I want it standardized, I said. The words came out clear and steady. I want her rent raised to the full, fair market price, whatever is legal. That is entirely within your rights, Amos said, a hint of admiration in his voice. We are required to give 45 days' notice for a rent adjustment of this size. We will send it from Ridgeview Holdings. Good. And the audio file? I am registering that, Amos said. As a protected exhibit in a domestic elder abuse claim, non-familial filing, it ensures it is admissible and protected from deletion if she tries to challenge us. That afternoon, Amos helped me open a new checking account at a bank where Evan had no connections. It was under my name, and my name alone. He transferred a modest, sensible amount of operating capital from the Trust My Money into my new account. I signed my name, and the teller handed me a new, crisp debit card. It went into my wallet, into a slot that I, and only I, controlled. Before I left Asheville, I went to an optician. I used my new card to buy a pair of titanium-framed glasses, the kind that don't bend or break. I went to a salon and had them cut my straggly hair into a short, neat, practical style. I threw the rubber band into the trash. Finally, I went to a department store. I bought a dark, charcoal grey pantsuit, a simple white blouse, and a pair of sensible, low-heeled shoes. I was not dressing up to be beautiful. I was dressing for work. I was putting on the uniform of Miriam Caldwell, the woman who had run the Everhart County office for 41 years. When I returned to the motel, I was the same woman, but I was not the same person. Just before 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Amos. Miriam, the notice of default, with the morality clause addendum attached, has been sent via certified mail and courier to Mr. and Mrs. Evan Caldwell. It will arrive tomorrow morning. The 45-day rent adjustment notice for Suite 4B has been sent to Lila Caldwell's place of business. The clock is running. Amos. I turned off the light. The neon sign outside still buzzed, but it no longer bothered me. For the first time in 8 months, I slept. The first call came 2 days after the notice of default was delivered by courier. I was in the small, clean, one-bedroom apartment I had rented. The lease signed in my own name. My new phone, a simple, untraceable flip model, buzzed on the Formica table. I recognized Evan's number. Mom, what is this? His voice was high, tight, with a panic I hadn't heard since he broke his arm at age 12. We got this letter. Some legal garbage from a Ridgeview Holdings. They're calling the loan. It's insane. It has to be a mistake. You have to call them. Mom, tell them you're fine. I sat very still. Hello? Evan? It is not a mistake. What, Mom? They're demanding the whole amount. We don't have that kind of money. We can't. Just tell them you're okay. I'll come get you. We just need time. I'll pay you. Mom, I promise. I just need more time. You have time, I said. My voice was calm. It sounded like my old voice, the one I used at the county office. The contract your father wrote, the one you and Lila both signed, gives you 30 days to cure the default. But 30 days? Mom, that's impossible. It is what you agreed to. You have 30 days. Evan, goodbye. I closed the phone. The silence lasted for nearly 48 hours. Then the second front exploded. Lila, predictably, did not call me. She took her case to social media. She posted a long, tearful, and vague message about the cruelty of family, about being stabbed in the back by a stingy, ungrateful old person who was trying to destroy her small business. She never used my name, but she didn't have to. I only saw it because Amos, monitoring everything, forwarded me a screenshot. Lila had, I noted, blocked Evan from being able to comment on the post. At the same time, her office at the Riverbend Artisan Market received its notice. The rent on her studio suite, the one she'd been paying 60% below market for, was being adjusted to the current rate, effective in 45 days. She called Amos's office. His paralegal later reported that Lila had threatened to sue Ridgeview Holdings for harassment, age discrimination, and emotional distress. Amos did not take the call. He simply instructed his paralegal to email Lila a scanned copy of the lease agreement she had signed, with the rent adjustment clause and the 45-day notice provision highlighted. The threats of a lawsuit stopped immediately. While they were scrambling, I took the bus to the community church downtown. I signed up to volunteer in the soup kitchen. The coordinator was a kind woman named Martha. I'd like to work the breakfast shift, I told her. And I must be clear. My purpose here is to serve the homeless adults. I am not equipped to counsel families or deal with stories involving children at this time. She just nodded, perhaps sensing my fragility, and handed me an apron. My new role as Ridgeview meant I was also a landlord. The Riverbend market manager called me, worried. Ma'am, one of the tenants is in my office, crying. She got the standardization letter. She's a good tenant. I had him transfer the call. It was a young woman, a single mother who worked nights as a nurse. She rented a small stall to sell her pottery on her 2 days off. I'm sorry, she wept. I can't afford that. I'll have to leave. I pulled her file. Perfect payment history. What is your name? I asked. Sarah. Sarah. This is Ridgeview. I am looking at your file. You have never been late. We reward good tenants. We will phase your increase in over 18 months, not 45 days. You can stay. Her gasp of relief was so profound, it made my own chest ache. That night, in a new spiral notebook, I wrote, "I will be hard on the entitled. I will be fair to the self-reliant." The pressure began to show. The market manager, who was now my eyes and ears, sent me a quiet email. Evan had been seen at a We Buy Cars lot, selling his expensive SUV. He also reported that Lila had been moving boxes of her high-end inventory out of the suite, likely to a private storage unit, trying to hide assets. They were desperate. But I was not a brute. I called Amos. "I want to offer them a structured payment plan," I said. "Not forgiveness, a path. But it must have conditions." The next day, Ridgeview Holdings sent a new offer. We would halt the foreclosure and convert the loan to a standard 10-year mortgage. The single condition both Evan and Lila must enroll in and complete the free 8-week financial management course offered on Tuesday nights at the community church. Lila's reaction, relayed by Evan, was to laugh. "A class at a church like we're idiots? He can go to hell." Evan did not respond. The next day, my email pinged. A new enrollment notification from the church. Evan had quietly, and by himself, signed up. That night, just after midnight, an email came to my personal account. It was from Evan. It was long. It was pages of incoherent apologies, excuses about Lila's temper, about the financial pressure, about how he was trying to protect me, about how he knew he had failed his father. It was a raw, bleeding confession from a man I barely recognized. I read every word. I saw my son, buried under the weight of his own choices. My hand hovered over the reply button. I wanted to write. "I'm still here." I wanted to write, "I forgive you." Instead, I moved the cursor. I clicked the small icon to mark the message as read. I did not reply. The time for words was over. Lila's social media posts had an unintended consequence. They made her visible. And a visible, noisy, angry neighbour is the one thing a homeowners association cannot ignore. The HOA, which governed their tidy, beige-coloured townhouse complex, had received multiple noise complaints. It turned out Lila's lifestyle consulting involved a great deal of high-volume arguments with Evan and slamming doors at all hours as she moved her merchandise. An emergency meeting was called in the community clubhouse. A sterile room with a dropped ceiling and uncomfortable stacking chairs. I went. I wore my grey suit. I sat in the very last row, my hands folded on top of my notebook. I watched as one neighbour, a tired-looking man in a pilot's uniform, played a muffled recording from his phone. You could hear a woman's voice, high and shrill, shouting about financial ruin. Lila, sitting at the front with Evan, immediately jumped to her feet. "This is harassment. We are grieving. We are under attack by my husband's unhinged mother." All eyes swiveled to the back, to me. I simply looked back at them, my face calm. This old woman," Lila continued, her voice trembling with manufactured rage, "has been stalking us. She is the one causing the problems. She is driving me crazy, telling lies, trying to steal our home. She's the one you should be fining, the HOA chairperson. A woman named Barb, who lived by Robert's Rules of Order, tapped her pen on the table. "Mrs. Caldwell, those are serious accusations. Do you have any proof that the noise complaints are false, or that you are being harassed?" "Proof my husband and I are the victims?" Lila shrieked. "Excuse me?" The voice came from the doorway. It was Amos Whitaker. He was not in his Asheville suit. He was dressed in a simple, professional blazer. He carried a leather briefcase. "My name is Amos Whitaker," he said, addressing the chairperson. "I represent Ridgeview Holdings, LLC, the primary lien holder on Unit 7B. We have a significant financial interest in seeing that the property's bylaws, which the owners signed, are upheld." Lila's face went white. Evan looked as if he was going to be sick. He sank lower in his plastic chair. Amos walked to the front, placing his briefcase on the table. "I have here," he said, "a copy of the HOA bylaws, signed by Mr. and Mrs. Evan Caldwell. You will note Article 4, Section 2, which strictly prohibits any in-home commercial enterprise that creates a public nuisance or involves non-resident foot traffic." He slid the paper to Barb. "But as to Mrs. Caldwell's other claim," he continued, his voice perfectly even. "The one about her being the victim of harassment from an old woman. We are also, by sheer coincidence, the legal administrators for the trust of the late Arthur Caldwell. We take accusations against his widow very seriously." He pulled out his phone and a small, black speaker. "This audio was recorded by the home's own smart doorbell. We have registered it as part of an ongoing legal matter." He pressed a button. The sound that filled the small, quiet room was not muffled. It was crystal clear. First, the sickening, sharp thwack of the towel striking flesh. Then, Lila's voice, high and savage. "That's mine." A collective gasp went through the room. The pilot's jaw dropped. Barb's hand flew to her mouth. Then, the second part of the recording, Lila's sneering, cruel voice. "See old people get confused." Amos pressed the button again. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy, and cold, and total. No one looked at Amos. Everyone, every single neighbor, was staring at Lila. Evan had his head in his hands. His shoulders were shaking. Barb, the chairperson, cleared her throat. Her face was flushed with anger. "Well," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "the evidence seems clear. I have a motion to fine Unit 7B the maximum amount for the noise violation and issue an immediate cease and desist order on all commercial activities." "Seconded," came the pilot's voice. "All in favor." Every hand in the room went up. Even Evan's. He raised his hand from his bald head, a single, trembling, defeated gesture, and voted against his own wife. "No, you can't!" Lila finally screamed. She jumped up, kicking her chair backward. "You're all pathetic. You're all just a bunch of jealous, old has-beens. You're siding with a crazy old—" "The secretary will please note Mrs. Caldwell's comments in the official minutes," Barb said calmly, as Lila grabbed her purse and stormed out of the clubhouse, slamming the door so hard the fluorescent lights flickered. I did not watch her go. I was looking at a bulletin board on the far wall, where the county had posted public notices. I saw the schedule for the local courthouse's mediation docket. Our case was on it. 3 days from now. I took out my phone and took a clear, steady picture of the schedule. As I stood to leave, a woman with soft white hair, who lived in the unit next to mine, put her hand on my arm. She just leaned in and whispered, "You are not alone, dear." She squeezed my arm, then walked away. I went back to my apartment. I made a cup of tea. I opened my new notebook. On a fresh page, I wrote one sentence. The truth speaks quietly, but it carries weight. The mediation was held in a grey, windowless room at the county courthouse. The air was stale, smelling of old coffee and dust. I sat at one side of the long table, with Amos Whitaker beside me. I was there as Miriam Caldwell, but officially, I was listed as the beneficiary representative for Ridgeview Holdings. On the other side sat Evan and Lila, and a court-appointed mediator who looked profoundly tired. Lila began before the mediator could even set the ground rules. She had her own lawyer now, a young man in a suit that was one size too large. "This entire situation is a sham," Lila's lawyer began, reading from a yellow legal pad. "We are here to demand the immediate cancellation of this fraudulent debt, and we are seeking damages for emotional distress and reputational harm." Amos let the silence sit for a moment before he spoke, his voice quiet and reasonable. "We are here," he said to the mediator, "because the borrowers, Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, are in default. The loan was called, per the explicit terms of the contract they both signed, after a clear violation of the Benefactor Protection Clause, a clause which forbids—" He put on his glasses, "verbal or physical mistreatment." "That's a lie," Lila shouted. Amos simply looked at the mediator. "We have the audio recording from the HOA meeting, which I believe you've reviewed, and the one from the smart doorbell, and the minutes from the HOA, which record Mrs. Caldwell's public, ageist slurs." Lila's lawyer started to stammer. Evan just stared at the table. "However," Amos continued, "my client is not interested in retribution. My client is interested in a solution." He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "Here is our proposal. Ridgeview Holdings will agree to halt the foreclosure and stop the default, under 3 very specific, non-negotiable conditions. An immediate, lump sum payment of 40% of the principal. B, the remaining balance will be amortized over an 18-month period at the standard market interest rate. And C, to avoid future conflicts of interest. Lila Caldwell will sign a quitclaim deed, removing herself from the title of the home." Lila shot out of her chair. "What he wants me to. I am not signing anything. I am not leaving my house." Evan's voice was a whisper, but it cut through his wife's screech. "Lila, sit down." "I will." Lila turned on him, her eyes blazing. "You will not. This is all her fault." She turned her furious gaze on me. "You think you can just destroy my life? I have pictures. On my phone? From when you first moved in. You, asleep on the sofa with your mouth open. You, in your bathrobe. Things you wouldn't want anyone to see. I will post them. I will send them to everyone. I will show them what you really are." My stomach clenched. But Amos Whitaker did not even blink. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a second document. He placed it on the table in front of her. "And I," Amos said, "have a pre-drafted temporary restraining order based on harassment and blackmail. The judge is in his chambers. If you so much as touch your phone, I will walk down the hall and have it signed and served on you inside of 5 minutes. Your move." Lila looked at the document. She looked at Amos. She looked at me. She sat down. The mediator, who had been watching this like a tennis match, finally spoke. He turned to me. "Ma'am? Representative? What is your goal here? What do you actually want?" I looked up, meeting his eyes. It was the first time I had spoken. "Fairness," I said. "And safety. Nothing more." There was nothing else to say. The mediator stamped the file. "I am granting a 7-day continuance. The borrowers have 7 days to produce the initial payment, as outlined in the proposal. If they do, this agreement stands." If they do not, the foreclosure will proceed as scheduled. We are done here. Amos pushed a second, smaller document toward Evan. This is a personal commitment, separate from the loan. It's a pledge. It states you will attend financial counseling and submit a monthly progress report to the trust. It also requires you to complete the community service you signed up for at the church. Lila scoffed. Community service? Pathetic. Evan ignored her. He read the entire document, picked up the pen, and signed his name. We all stood. We filed out into the hallway. I pressed the button for the elevator. Evan and Lila were behind me. As the elevator doors opened, Evan moved quickly, his hand reaching for mine. Mum, please. I pulled my hand back, not in anger, but in procedure. We will talk after the ruling is final. Evan, I said, my voice quiet. I stepped into the elevator. Amos was right behind me, but Lila, in a final act of spite, shoved past him to get in front of me. As she did, she drove her shoulder hard into my side, a solid, deliberate impact that knocked me off balance and into the elevator wall. You will regret this, she spat. The doors started to close. Amos held them open, just for a second, and looked past me, up at the ceiling of the hallway. Thank you, he said. I followed his gaze. A black, circular camera, the building's security, was aimed directly at us. It had captured the whole thing. The doors closed, taking me, Amos, and a seething Lila down to the lobby. The 7 days passed. On the morning of the 8th day, the bank account for Ridgeview Holdings remained empty. There was no lump sum payment of 40%. The only communication was a single, frantic email from Evan, sent from his phone at 3 a.m. I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to find it. I just need more time. Please, Mum, don't do this. Lila was silent, but she was not idle. On the 9th day, I received an automated email from the Riverbend Artisan Markets financial system, forwarded by the manager. A red flag, a new credit card, registered to Lila's Luxury Finds LLC. A shell corporation I had never heard of, had been used to pay the old 60% discounted rent. She was trying to bypass the new lease agreement and establish a payment history at the lower rate, creating a new legal loophole. I called Amos. She is in violation of the rent agreement and is attempting to commit fraud. I see it, Miriam, he said. Close her account. Terminate the lease, immediately. By the terms of her contract, Amos said, we can give her a 24-hour notice to vacate due to willful breach and fraudulent payment. Do it, I said, and hung up. The market manager reported that the notice was served at noon. Lila's reaction was apparently operatic. She was seen by multiple tenants, frantically loading boxes and clothing racks into her luxury hatchback. In her rush, she misjudged the exit and drove her car directly into the complex's new electronic security gate, snapping the arm and cracking her own bumper. The security guards, whom she had apparently screamed at, filed a detailed incident report, which was on my desk within an hour. That night, my personal phone, the one Evan had the number for, lit up. It was not a call. It was a text message from a number I did not recognize, but I knew who it was from. 5 words. You will regret this. I did not reply. I took a screenshot, forwarded it to Amos, and then I blocked the number. The next morning, at 9 a.m. sharp, a licensed and bonded agent from the trustee's office, accompanied by a local sheriff's deputy, walked up the front path of Unit 7B and affixed a large, brightly coloured sign to the front door. A notice of trustees' sale. The house was now officially in foreclosure. The sale was scheduled for a public auction on the courthouse steps, to take place in 21 days. This was no longer a negotiation. It was a public record, legal countdown. Evan, seeing the sign, must have entered his final panic. He called Lila. He called her repeatedly. The market manager, who still had a friend at the complex, told me the neighbours could hear his muffled, desperate shouts. But Lila was gone. Her phone was off. She had taken her car, her merchandise, and her anger, and had driven to Charlotte to stay with friends. She had, in the most final, irreversible way, abandoned him. 2 days later, I was at the church for my own kitchen shift. I was wiping down the stainless steel counters when the pastor, Reverend Michael, found me. "Miriam," he said quietly, "a man came in last night. Your son." I stopped wiping. "Oh, he didn't ask for you. I don't even think he knew you were here. He just came in for the evening meal. He ate. And then he went to the kitchen manager and signed up for a regular shift, washing the trays." I looked at him, and he must have seen the question in my eyes. "He's not doing it to impress you, Miriam," Michael said, his voice gentle. "He's doing it, I think, because he's hungry, and he has nowhere else to go. He needs to do something with his hands. He's just listening." My shift ended. I went home. I received an email from Michael later that week. "Evan has been here every night. He is quiet. He washes the trays. He does not talk about himself." I marked the email as read, the night before the final, non-negotiable foreclosure hearing. I sat in my small, quiet apartment. The 21 days had passed. Tomorrow, the sale would be finalized. The house would be sold. I opened the manila envelope from Arthur. I took out his letter, the one I now knew by heart. My eyes found the sentence that mattered. "I have always known your strength. I built you a legal railing, my love. It's just to stop you from falling. The rest of the way, you have to walk." I folded the letter. The railing had done its job. It had held me. It had gotten me to my feet. Tomorrow, I would walk. On the morning of the final hearing, I walked into the courthouse alone. I wore my charcoal grey suit, and pinned to the lapel was Arthur's silver oak leaf tie pin. The courtroom was quiet, smelling of dark wood polish and the faintest hint of stale coffee. I sat beside Amos. Evan was already at the respondent's table, his shoulders slumped. He looked thin. Just as the judge sat, the doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. Lila marched in, her heels clicking loudly on the tile. She was not crying. Her face was bright with a terrible, manic energy. "Your Honor." "Wait," she announced. She was holding a sheaf of papers. "I have a new agreement. I drafted it myself." She strode past the bar and tried to hand the papers to the judge, who recoiled slightly. "This is an ambush," she said, her voice high. "It's all a misunderstanding. I will agree to move back into the house and reconcile with my husband, on one condition." The judge stared at her. "Ma'am." "The sale must be cancelled," she continued, "and Miriam Caldwell must transfer 30% of her shares in the Riverbend Artisan Market to my name, as compensation for my pain and suffering." The judge looked at her, then at Amos. "Mr. Whitaker." Amos stood. He did not look at Lila. He addressed the judge. Your Honor, we will not be entertaining this fantasy. We rest on the facts, which are not in dispute. He began placing items on the table, one by one. Exhibit A, the audio recording of the assault. Exhibit B, the certified minutes from the Homeowners Association meeting, documenting the public abuse. Exhibit C, the email and text messages containing threats. Exhibit D, the security video from the hallway of this very courthouse, capturing Mrs. Lila Caldwell's physical assault on my client. And finally, the original, binding deed of Larust, with the morality clause they both agreed to. The judge sighed, a long, weary sound. He looked at Evan. Mr. Caldwell, this is the end of the line. The default is confirmed. The trustee's sale is today. Do you have any practical plan? Any plan at all to cure this? Evan stood up. His hands were shaking. But he did not look at Lila. He looked at the judge. Your Honor, he said, his voice raspy. He placed a small, neat file on the table. This is my new budget. This is a pay stub from my new job. It's a night shift at a warehouse. This is my enrollment confirmation for the financial counseling program. And this is my attendance sheet from the community kitchen. A sharp, ugly sound erupted from Lila. It was a laugh. A warehouse, he's washing dishes, pathetic. Order. The judge's gavel cracked. That is enough. Mrs. Caldwell, one more word, and I will have you removed for contempt. He looked at Evan's papers. He looked at me. The default is absolute, he declared. The right of foreclosure is affirmed. The trustee's sale will proceed as scheduled. Evan's face crumpled. However, the judge continued, given Mr. Caldwell's demonstrable, good faith efforts to seek employment and counseling, I will grant the statutory 15-day right of redemption. If the borrower can produce the minimum payment as outlined in the original mediation agreement within 15 days, the loan may be reinstated. That is my ruling. Lila started to stand up again, but I spoke first. I turned in my chair and looked at my son. Evan. He met my gaze. His eyes were bloodshot. If you, I said, my voice clear and carrying in the quiet room, can secure that minimum payment on your own in 15 days, I will authorize Ridgeview to extend the loan for the remaining balance. You will have 12 months, at the full market rate. If you fail, the house will be sold. I am not trading conditions to buy affection. This is the only offer. You are both evil, Lila shrieked, finally jumping to her feet. Both of you. Conspiring your dead husband was evil, and you are... Amos Whitaker was already on his feet, handing a file to the bailiff. Your Honor, in light of that outburst and the previous assault, we file for an emergency order of protection against harassment. The judge scrawled his name on the paper. Granted, Mrs. Caldwell. You will stay 500 feet away from Mrs. Miriam Caldwell. Bailiff. Remove her. The hearing was over. I walked out onto the stone steps of the courthouse. The sun was bright, the air cold and clean. I heard the doors open behind me. It was Evan. He stood a few feet away, blinking in the sunlight. Mum, he said, his voice raw. I'm not asking for money. I know I can't. I'm asking for the same chance, the same fairness you gave that nurse at the market. I looked at him, my son, finally standing alone. Fairness, I said, was on the paper from the very beginning. Evan, the rest is up to you. I turned, and I walked down the steps, my head high. sallying forth into the bright, clear sunshine. 3 weeks later, the redemption period expired. The payment was not made. At the trustees' sale, the representative from Ridgeview Holdings was the sole bidder, and the asset returned, legally and finally, to the trust. That afternoon, I signed the papers to sell the house. I then signed a second set of documents, transferring a significant portion of the proceeds to establish the Arthur Caldwell Vocational Fund, a scholarship for adults who needed to learn a new trade. I put the pen down. The door was closed. There was no sequel, no lingering rage. There was only the quiet, clean sound of executed clauses, and a woman who had, at last, put her own life back in order. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and hit that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.